The rain was falling in thin, cold needles when Jonathan Hale stepped out of the black sedan and walked toward the private terminal entrance. The airport ground crew barely looked up, and most people didn't recognize him unless they read business journals or watched financial news. But Jonathan didn't care about recognition. He had long ago learned that respect given only after people recognized your name was never real respect. He paused at the glass door, brushing raindrops off his tailored charcoal coat. He had a calm dignity about him, the kind that made people feel both comforted and intimidated at once. His skin was a deep, rich brown, flawless, and his hair was cropped neatly. His eyes, warm yet sharp, carried the weight of a life that had not come easy. Every accomplishment he had was carved through storms he never asked for. He was the CEO of Hale Technologies, a multi-billion-dollar aviation software company. Ironically, he had come to the airport not as a VIP passenger but as a silent inspector. One of his partner airlines had been facing troubling complaints of safety issues, crew misconduct, racial bias allegations. Instead of sending an auditor, he came himself, unannounced. He believed in seeing human behavior when no one knew they were being watched. He believed in truth over reports. As he stepped inside, the smell of coffee and disinfectant hung faintly in the air. A young attendant at the counter looked up. Her smile faltered for half a second, just long enough for Jonathan to catch it. That tiny flicker of judgment, the kind he had known since he was old enough to understand he was different. "Good morning," he said gently. She nodded stiffly. "Ticket?" He handed it over. She scanned it and blinked. "First class, flight 78 to New York." "Yes." She hesitated, studying him again in a way that made it clear she was trying to reconcile the expensive ticket with the man standing before her. "Sir, this ticket was booked by corporate. Care to verify your employment?" she asked. Jonathan breathed slowly. He had learned long ago that anger gave small-minded people satisfaction. Calmness unsettled them far more. "I don't need to verify anything. The booking should already show that the seat is under corporate allocation." The attendant chewed her lip, then shook her head. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside. I don't want to cause an issue, but first-class passengers must follow proper." Before she finished, a man in a suit approached the counter. "Hey," he said loudly, "you're holding up the line. He doesn't look like first class. Just let him board economy and move on." The attendant's eyes widened, silently agreeing. Jonathan's chest tightened. The same old story written 1,000 times in his life. Assumptions, prejudices, quiet, casual disrespect wrapped in fake policies. He gave the attendant a long, steady look. "My seat is 2A. he said softly. "I will board with the group that corresponds to that seat." She exhaled sharply through her nose, obviously irritated. "Sir, I'm denying your boarding to first class until verification is complete. Please wait." He stepped aside, still dignified, as she called the next passenger, greeting them in a cheerful tone that was noticeably absent moments before. He waited silently, watching the line move. Some passengers glanced at him with curiosity, others with mild suspicion. The businessman from earlier smirked as he passed. "Tough luck," he muttered under his breath. Jonathan said nothing. 12 minutes passed. 12 long, quiet minutes. In those minutes, Jonathan remembered being 10 years old, standing outside a grocery store with his mother as the clerk accused them of trying to steal, simply because they were holding too many items. He remembered being ignored in boardrooms, spoken over, underestimated, treated like he had wandered into a world where he didn't belong. He remembered working twice as hard, speaking twice as carefully, achieving 10 times more than anyone expected, or because the world only softened when you forced it to. Finally, boarding began. Jonathan walked forward again. The attendant stopped him immediately. "Sir, I told you already." A voice cut through the air. "Is there a problem here?" It came from the captain, a 50-something, tall, with gray streaks in his hair. Captain Reeves had just stepped out of the gate door, adjusting his coat, clearly irritated at being pulled into the issue. "Yes," the attendant said. "This passenger is trying to board first class, but I don't believe the ticket belongs to him." Jonathan lifted an eyebrow. "She is mistaken." Captain Reeves gave him a long, dismissive stare. "Sir, this flight is full. and we cannot accommodate fraudulent behavior. If you cause further disruption, I will have security escort you off airport property." Jonathan looked at the man calmly. "I expect my seat, nothing more." But people like Reeves didn't listen to calmness, only authority. And that was the moment the pilot stepped closer, grabbed Jonathan's forearm, and not violently, but firmly, enough to show authority. "Sir, step away." "I'm not repeating myself." That contact, that unnecessary force, sent a tremor of memory down Jonathan's spine. Stronger hands had grabbed him before. Police hands, security hands, hands that acted first and apologized never. He pulled his arm away. "Don't touch me," Reeves scoffed. "You're done here. Escort is coming." And that was it. 12 minutes. 12 minutes of watching small people play power games. 12 minutes of seeing exactly what he came to investigate: how casual prejudice, systemic disrespect, unsafe authority. He inhaled deeply and reached into his coat pocket slowly, deliberately, pulling out a sleek black identification card made of metal rather than plastic. It bore the embossed logo of Hale Technologies, his company. It bore a gold strip, a digital signature, and one unmistakable title: Chief Executive Officer Jonathan M. Hale. He handed it to the pilot. The color drained from the captain's face. The attendant's jaw slowly dropped. Jonathan spoke quietly, but the force behind his words felt like thunder. "You have just denied a first-class seat up and laid hands on the CEO of the company that designs and monitors your aircraft's flight safety software. Your airline receives our highest-level compliance audits, and this terminal, this gate, and this flight are currently under a covert inspection for misconduct." Silence swallowed the terminal. Every nearby passenger froze. The captain stuttered, "Sir, Mr. Hale, I didn't know. There must be some misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding," Jonathan said, his voice steady. "I observed exactly what I needed to observe." He tapped a button on his phone. A green light blinked, a recording of the entire interaction, captured by the discreet lens in his lapel. He sent the file instantly with the swipe. In less than 3 seconds, it reached the airline's Director of Operations and the Federal Compliance Board. Jonathan then looked at the terminal supervisor, who had rushed over after seeing commotion. "This aircraft is grounded, effective immediately." The supervisor blinked, stunned. "Grounded, sir?" "Yes," Jonathan said, "under Emergency Compliance Order 742. No personnel from this crew is cleared to operate until an investigation is complete." The captain's face turned ghost white. "Please see, you can't do that." "I can," Jonathan replied, "and I am." He turned slightly. "And one more thing, Captain Reeves, consider this your last flight under this airline." The pilot staggered backward as if struck. "Fired?" he whispered. "You grabbed the passenger without cause," Jonathan said softly. "You exercised bias, made assumptions, and threatened security involvement without protocol. That alone is grounds for dismissal. But your attitude and behavior toward customers amplify the severity." The attendant's eyes filled with terror. "Sir, please see, don't fire me. I was only following you." Jonathan held up a hand. "I'm not firing you." She exhaled shakily. "But you will undergo mandatory retraining," he continued, "with direct supervision, because your actions were not driven by policy but by personal prejudice." Her relief turned into embarrassment. She lowered her head. Passengers around were watching closely, some ashamed, some in awe, some murmuring apologies for what Jonathan had endured. Jonathan finally spoke louder, addressing the entire gate. "Let me be clear," he said. "This is not about me being the CEO. This is about how people are treated when no one powerful is watching. That defines the soul of a company. That defines its future." The terminal fell silent. A few passengers clapped softly. Others nodded, visibly moved. Jonathan turned to leave, but a voice called from behind, a woman in her mid-70s, her voice trembling. "Thank you," she said. "You stood up for all of us who've been treated unfairly. Thank you, son." Jonathan paused, his heart softening. He stepped toward her, gently held her hand, and smiled. "No one deserves to be made to feel less," he told her. "Not on my watch." She squeezed his fingers gently. "Your mother must be proud." His throat tightened. His mother, his anchor, his idea had passed 3 years before, but he carried her lessons like a shield. He swallowed, blinking hard. She was, he whispered. He walked away to a quieter part of the terminal as airport management rushed to reorganize crew and passengers. The flight would be delayed by hours. But the truth had been exposed in minutes. 12 minutes. He sat near a tall glass window, watching rain streak down the panes. For a while, he simply breathed, letting the tension leave his shoulders. He didn't like asserting power. He never enjoyed making examples of people. But fairness required courage, and courage often demanded discomfort. A soft voice approached. Mr. Hale, a young flight attendant different from the earlier Onia, stood there, hands clasped nervously. Yes? He asked. I just a broken bar wanted to say I'm sorry for what happened. I've seen similar things. I didn't know how to speak up, but what you did means a lot, not just to passengers, to staff too. Jonathan studied her face. She wasn't lying. She wasn't trying to flatter him. She was relieved, encouraged. What's your name? He asked. Lena, he said warmly. You spoke up. Even now, when you didn't have to. That's integrity. Her eyes shimmered. Thank you, sir. He nodded. The industry needs people like you. Would you mind answering a few questions lateral for the compliance report? Of course, sir. Gladly. She walked away, shoulders a little straighter. Jonathan exhaled and leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment. He remembered the first time he flew first class. He was 27, newly promoted, excited, nervous, and the attendant that day had questioned him 4 times if he was sure he had the right seat. He had smiled then too, endured it, took his seat quietly. He decided, that day, that he would build a company where dignity was not optional. Now he had. After a few minutes, the airline's regional director, a woman named Karen Alvarez, hurried toward him with an apologetic expression. Mr. Hale, I came as soon as I received the file. I want to personally apologize for the unacceptable behavior you witnessed. Rest assured, the investigation will be thorough. I know it will, Jonathan said, because I'll be overseeing it myself. She blinked. You will? Yes. He said, I want this airline to succeed, but it cannot succeed with rot in its foundation. She nodded nervously. Understood. We'll arrange you another flight, a private one if you prefer. He shook his head. Book me on the next commercial one. Standard process. I don't need a special plane. She stared at him, humbled by the simplicity of his request. Of course. He stood up, looking out at the rain-soaked runway. His reflection in the glass looked tired, older than he felt, but behind that fatigue was resiliency, as something pain had built, not privilege. Miss Alvarez, he said suddenly. Yes, sir? Use this incident as a lesson, not a scandal. Her eyebrows raised slightly. A lesson? Teach your staff what respect looks like, what fairness looks like, what humanity looks like. That's how an airline grows. She nodded slowly, almost emotionally. We will, I promise. Jonathan walked away, suitcase rolling softly behind him. 2 hours later, he boarded a different flight. The new crew treated him like every other passenger, kindly, politely, professionally. No assumptions, no hesitation, just simple respect. As he sank into his seat of first class again, though he hardly cared, he closed his eyes and allowed himself a small, tired smile. He didn't ground the plane because he was offended. He grounded it because dignity is not negotiable, because power means nothing if you don't use it to protect people, because sometimes the most important battles are fought not in boardrooms or stock markets but at a boarding gate, where a man simply wanted the seat he paid for, the seat he deserved, the seat that told him he belonged. And for all the storms in his life, he had never forgotten the one truth his mother told him: son, when you see wrong, don't walk past it, fix it, even if your voice shakes. Today, his voice didn't shake. Today, he corrected something that had been wrong for far too long. And as the plane prepared for takeoff, Jonathan looked out the window at the runway lights glowing through the lingering drizzle. 12 minutes, just 12 minutes, enough to expose the truth, enough to change a policy, enough to remind an industry that every passenger, every human deserves dignity. He rested his head back, exhaled slowly, and whispered into the quiet cabin, "For you, Mom." The engines roared gently, the plane lifted into the sky, and Jonathan Hale flew forward, and not as a CEO, not as a symbol, but as a man who believed deeply, fiercely, unshakably in fairness.